helping a dangerous foreign power. Wow. Details in tonight's Angle, plus a special Christmas edition, of Seen and Unseen later in the show. Raymond Arroyo is here to expose a city with no room for baby Jesus, as well as some of the most shocking toys flying off the shelves this season. But we begin tonight with liberal activists, politicians, and the media attacking American sovereignty. Now, it's important to know that the forces that oppose open debate on immigration, so you got to stay with me. Here first, though, there are liberal advocacy groups siding with illegal immigrants over our own border agents. Overwhelmed by the crush of thousands of asylum seekers at the border, the Trump administration has instituted a practice known as metering. The procedure is meant to help alleviate the pressure on the border by limiting the number of asylum seekers allowed to enter the country each day once they present themselves at a port of entry. Seems kind of reasonable given the limited resources we have. Well, not according to the advocacy group Al Otro Lado. The activist legal aid group is slapping the Trump administration with a class action lawsuit over the practice. Melissa Crow, an attorney with the Southern Poverty Law Center's Immigration Justice Project, says the goal, quote, is to get CBP to comply with a law which requires them to process the asylum seekers at ports of entry. The law requires them to admit legitimate asylum seekers into the country. Last fiscal year, immigration judges found that only about 9% of all those immigrants qualified as asylees. Despite that, the lies from the talking heads continue to pile up.
People coming to our country asking for asylum, which also is their right to do.
These individuals are in America. By law, they should be able to apply for asylum.
Most of the people we've talked to really are just exerting their legal right to asylum.
The second group attacking your sovereignty are politicians partnering with these advocacy organizations to create these well-choreographed, fairly theatrical stunts. Just yesterday, Democratic reps Nanette Berrigan and Jimmy Gomez, both of the Los Angeles area, accompanied 15 asylum seekers from the Central American caravan to the Otay Mesa port of entry. Their goal? To push for a greater number of asylum claims. Well, imagine our surprise when we discovered that the group they partnered with is the same group suing the Trump administration, Al Otro Lado. The third group, guilty of manipulation, though, over the issue, the American media. Using emotion over facts and honesty, well, they purposely muddy all conversations related to immigration. Take this little exchange on Morning Joe today.
In a nondescript building in downtown El Paso, Ruben Garcia is welcoming yet another busload of migrants, just processed and released from ICE custody.
Ya están libres, que ya no están con la migra. Okay.
He's the director of Annunciation House, a group of volunteers providing shelter and food for thousands of migrants a week. The desire to breathe free in America is real, but parents' sacrifices come at a price.
I don't want to separate from my sister.
Is that his biggest fear?
¿Es tu temor más grande? Yes, it is.
After months on the road with the American dream in sight, these migrants who know the uncertainty ahead are allowing hope to prevail over fear.
These are folks who have hope. These are folks who have dreams, and that's why they're here, because they think that they have a better shot at a better life, and they're not going to give up on their hopes and dreams, and we're not either.
The hopes and dreams, there are a lot of people who have them. I think the last survey is that 160 million people around the world had the hope or the dream to come to the country, and most of those overwhelmingly want to follow the rule of law, and they want to be part of the the American experiment that includes law and order. More on this. No wonder that in a new Gallup poll, by the way, actual Americans point to immigration as the issue most important to them, right behind our government. So why aren't the activists, the politicians, the majority of the media listening to you? Here to debate, Tom Homan, former acting director of ICE and a Fox News contributor, and Lisa Johnson Firth is a principal of Immigrants First and a professor of law at Georgetown University. It's good to have you both. Let's start with you, Professor. I understand that there's a great humanitarian story to be told here. There are thousands and thousands of people, and indeed millions probably in Central America. I've spent a lot of time in both Salvador and Guatemala, and I know the people well. I know the place well. Beautiful countries, very corrupt. But most of these aren't asylees. Most of these are economic migrants. And by our own Border Patrol, even during Obama, most of them were overwhelmingly rejected. So why isn't the metering slowing this down so we can process people in an orderly way? Why isn't that the right way to go?
Well, first, I would take issue that they are economic migrants. If you read the State Department report on any of these countries, the Northern Triangle, they're some of the most violent countries in the world. Gangs have, as you noted, taken over those countries. They're very corrupt and very dangerous. And so I would say I've been practicing immigration law for about 16 years. 10 years ago, yes, I was seeing many more economic migrants. Now I believe that I'm seeing in my caseload true asylum seekers fleeing horrific gang violence.
But that's not really that's not one of the credible, that doesn't work on the credible fear calculus, does it?
Those cases are difficult to win because of the way asylum law has been constructed.
So you think it should be more lenient than it is now?
I think that, first of all, getting to the metering, I'm going to address your issue, but getting to the metering issue, when we are having people report to ports of entry rather than being able to cross the border wherever, which is obviously being challenged, Trump's decision to have that, we're basically forcing a huge population to go through very small entry points. And in the process of waiting, those people are subject to violence while they're waiting. I just interviewed a woman last week who was raped while waiting at the border. She'd actually been gang raped 60 times in her process of coming to the United States. And so I think we're increasing the danger. Obviously, some people will turn back. I think it is a way that the government's discouraging people from legitimately presenting asylum claims at the border that they're entitled to under U.S. law and under international law.
Tom, I think the politicians have really blown this. I mean, I have no doubt that horrific things, we already know horrific things have happened to children, to women, and to others, and there are criminal elements within the migrant caravan. We know that. That's already been proven. But politicians refuse to do what they need to do to make this system work. They refuse. And right now on Capitol Hill, the light's still on over there. They're not going to do anything.
Well, look, the politicians, as you said, it's a political ploy what they're doing down there. They went down and got this group of 15, moved them to the front of the line, and had the 2,500 people that were waiting in line playing by the rules. I got to disagree with you. I've been enforcing immigration law about twice as long as you've been practicing it. And I'm telling you, most of these people are not legitimate asylum seekers. Violence is not a claim for asylum, and 90% lose it. What the politicians ought to be doing, rather than going out there and pulling a political ploy like they're doing, they ought to be here in Washington, D.C., fixing the loopholes in our immigration laws that causes these caravans to even exist in the first place. I've been up on Hill many times this past year with the Secretary, close it, raise the asylum bar, address the Florida settlement agreement, give ICE detention money so it's not back to catch and release. If they close these loopholes, they will stop a lot of this illegal immigration. But it isn't about protecting the border. It isn't about closing loopholes. It's about taking on the Trump administration. It's about politics, head of public safety and national security.
I want to play something. This was Joe Scarborough this morning, who was a Republican. I guess is no longer a Republican. He made this comment. Let's watch.
I believe that when you come to the United States, you should come here legally. This is what is lost in this argument. These people coming to America now are coming here legally. They are seeking refugee status. And that is legal. And as far as America being overloaded, there's a net negative flow back into Mexico.
Right. Net negative flow back into Mexico. But it's not Mexico that's the point, right? It's just more as the Central American, as you say, the Triangle folks are the ones who are coming in.
We got to take it back to the basics.
But they're not refugees, they're asylees. He's totally mixing up the terminology.
To study the issue before he starts talking, but we got to get back to the original issue. If they are really escaping fear and persecution from Honduras, they're in Mexico. All right? They've already escaped that fear and persecution. And they ought to be claiming asylum in the first safe place they come to. A couple of thousand people already took Mexico up on that. So it isn't about escaping fear and persecution. This is about getting to the United States because of maybe violence, because they're going to rejoin family members illegally already here.
And I want the professor to react to this. It looks like the United States is going to give billions of dollars to Mexico and to Central America, in part to try to help them keep people in their homelands and also give people jobs in Mexico. I guess, what is it, $4.6 billion that came out today? I guess that's, it looks like they're not giving that money for nothing. That money is going, I think, in part, say, look, you got to stop this flow coming up to the United States. You got to start incorporating people into Mexico. Why aren't the people staying in Mexico?
Because Mexico is not safe either. The same gangs and cartels that are in Honduras and El Salvador and Guatemala are also in Mexico.
So do you think everybody from those countries should just be able to come because it's a bad place? Because there are a lot of bad places around the world.
I would say that if you look at the American history and our history in Central America of what we've done over the past 100 years, that we have created a lot of the refugee crisis.
So it's kind of a reparations thing.
I believe in part that it is. That, yes, we should be sending money to those countries to help establish safer governments, more accountable governments, but it's also, that's not going to happen overnight. And in the meantime, we do have thousands of, particularly of women and children who are fleeing for their lives. And that must be addressed, and we have an international obligation to address that.
International obligation. Tom.
The facts of the matter is, as I was the ICE director, we remove thousands of people from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador to their countries every day. And there's no claim of fear. These planes are full. Several planes a week go down all three of those countries. Very few Mexicans claim asylum, so I don't agree with Mexico not being a safe place. We don't have a lot of Mexicans claim asylum for reasons. So again, we got to get back to the basics of what's really going on here. These are people who want to come to this country for a better life. Can't blame them for that.
No.
But you can't want to be a part of the greatest country on earth and not respect its laws. You can't have it both ways.
Well, you're skipping the line, but they're also using the system as it exists today. The system is ridiculous. And the fact that this crowd up on Capitol Hill will not address this, tonight they should be addressing this issue. It is a crisis. The crisis on our southern border has been for a long time. Great debate, you guys. Thank you so much. And now on to another story you're not going to find covered on the other networks. Remember that infamous Steele dossier, that document that led to the surveillance of Trump campaign officials? Well, the reporter who actually broke the news of its existence revealed in a recent interview that it's probably all bunk.
When you actually get into the details of the Steele dossier, the specific allegations, we have not seen the evidence to support them. There's good grounds to think that some of the more sensational allegations will never be proven and are likely false.
Here now, Byron York, chief political correspondent at the Washington Examiner, and Andy McCarthy, former assistant U.S. attorney, both Fox News contributors. Byron, let's start with you. You've been covering this extensively. Michael Isikoff was the guy. I mean, he kind of delivered this story to journalists, and they were salivating over the Steele dossier, and still are, in their comments about it.
Yeah, this is very important that Isikoff is saying this. Remember, back a month before the presidential election, Christopher Steele was desperate to stop Donald Trump and desperate to get the dossier into the press. And he went to a bunch of reporters, about a half a dozen. Michael Isikoff was one of those. But they didn't really bite on the whole thing. And it wasn't until the intelligence chiefs, remember that the head of the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, went up to Trump Tower on January 6th of 2017. Donald Trump is the president-elect. They go up there, they brief him on Russian efforts to interfere with the election, and after that, there's a one-on-one meeting with Comey and President-elect Trump, and Comey tells him about that dossier story about Trump being in a hotel room with prostitutes in Moscow. The dossier has played a key role. That was a key role in getting Trump and the FBI off to a very, very bad relationship. It's been a really important part of this Trump-Russia investigation.
Andy, I want to go to you. Even when we saw some of the transcript of what Comey was saying yesterday on Capitol Hill, he's blaming the Republicans. Despite the fact that we know this dossier was phony from the beginning, Steele was the guy who brought it together with the help of Fusion GPS, Democrat firm. It wasn't, but he's like, well, the Republicans initially funded it. A long debunked myth that was conveniently parroted for months and months and months. He's still parroting that.
Yeah, Laura, a lot of the real anguish over this that people, I think, should feel is precisely that. A lot of this stuff has been debunked. Byron's done reporting months ago that debunked, this and that aspect of what we're talking about. And what I would be infuriated about if I were, say, a FISA court judge, or if I were the president, for that matter, is that
This material started to come into the FBI in July of 2016. They didn't go to the FISA court until October of 2016. And when I read the Steele dossier when it first became publicly available, what occurred to me as somebody who used to do this for a living is there were a lot of details that should have been easy enough for the FBI to run down and corroborate. There were sources that were identified with enough specificity that they should have been able to figure out who they were. And in short order, understanding that a lot of this is in Russia, but nevertheless, using Steele, who was working with the FBI, they should have been able to identify these people and figure out, yes, this happened, or no, it didn't. And yet, you know, the incident that Byron just referred to, where they go and brief Trump at Trump Towers, that's 5 months after this information started to come into the FBI. And the thought that they hadn't corroborated it by then, and yet they were using it as information that was worthy of briefing the president-elect, is just astonishing to me.
Laura,
I want to play. Okay, let me hold on one second, Byron. I just want to play for people so people know how fraudulent this is. I want to play a short montage of individuals who are still touting the dossier. Let's watch.
You know, it's interesting here, Mimi. This is another win for the so-called Steele dossier.
There's the question of whether there's the tape that exists that was brought up in the Steele dossier, which is, by the way, looking better and better as more charges are brought in.
Nothing in that dossier, the Michael Steele, the Christopher Steele dossier, has been proven to be wrong.
Byron, this whole thing has been a complete and utter fraud and a pretext, whatever you want to call it, to set this in motion, to surveil Trump, to get into his finances, and to try to go to town. Insurance policy on down.
Can't be proven untrue is kind of turning the normal standard on its head. You know, while it's important that Michael Isikoff is saying this now, it's kind of clear the handwriting is on the wall because of events. For example, one of the big parts of the dossier has Michael Cohen, very close to President Trump, or candidate Trump at the time, going to Prague in Europe and meeting with Russians and agreeing on a payoff in which the Trump campaign would pay the Russians for all the hacking they were doing, helping the Trump campaign. Michael Cohen said this is patently false. Now, Michael Cohen has since been charged with all sorts of things, has been investigated.
But not lying about that.
Correct. Not only about been investigated by the special counsel's office and prosecutors in New York, been charged and pleaded guilty and sentenced, and nobody said a word about Prague.
Yeah. No collusion. I mean, Andy, unless something really wild happens, no collusion.
Laura,
they got
if there had been if there had been collusion, they would have had these accomplices testify to a conspiracy to commit espionage, and they would have come into court and said, yes, there was a conspiracy. Here's what I did. Here's what President Trump did. Here's who was in charge of coordinating with the Kremlin and so on. That's the way you build a case. You have the accomplice plead guilty to the main scheme that you're trying to prove in the case, and then you're 90% of the way home. The way you don't build a case is by pleading all of your witnesses to false statements to the FBI, so that the one enduring thing the jury will take away from the trial is that your witnesses can't be believed.
Yeah, it's just classic, guys. Thank you so much. And ahead, could the incoming Democrat House leaders actually put our future at risk by spending all their energy trying to take down Trump? Our angle explores what dangerous country will benefit most of all. Next.
All money managers.
Back to Hannity. A partial government shutdown looms ahead of Friday's deadline. The Democrat hysterics have already begun. Republicans offered to compromise on the amount of funding for the wall, but the Democrats immediately rejected that deal. Earlier tonight, President Trump tweeted, quote, "The Democrats are saying loud and clear that they do not want to build a concrete wall, but we are not building a concrete wall. We are building artistically designed steel slats so that you can easily see through it. It will be beautiful and at the same time give our country the security that our citizens deserve. It will go up fast and save us billions of dollars a month once completed." Joining us now with reaction, Fox News contributor Charles Hurt, GOPAC chairman David Avella, and former Clinton pollster and Fox News contributor Doug Schoen. Okay, Doug, now you were laughing here. Now, the wall with the beautiful slats, are you questioning whether we're actually going to get that?
I don't think we're going to get the wall. I mean, I think the deal that should have been done last week was the $1.6 billion in border security, fund the government, and move forward. I think this is, frankly, a setback for the cause of border security and building the wall, and also a setback for democracy, because the fact that we can't fund the government, and I understand it's only a partial shutdown we're facing, but this is pathetic.
Well, but you know what? This isn't Trump's fault. I mean, at the end of the day, David Avella, I mean, what we're talking about is border security, which has been kicked down the road since, actually, I think 1986. But, you know, last I remember is 2006. And, you know, now what we've got are Schumer and Pelosi saying it's a non-starter. It's not happening. You're not getting the wall. Are we getting the wall?
Ed, to your point there, Judge, that here you have a preview of what the next 2 years is going to be like. Look, over the last 2 years, we had 10 Senate Democrats in states that President Trump won. It was in their interest to find common ground with the president. Going into the 2020 elections, there's two: Doug Jones of Alabama and Gary Peters of Michigan. There are less Democrats now willing to work with the president on border security, on health care, on the economy. Why? Because it's in their interest to obstruct and investigate and ultimately seek to impeach the president.
You know, Charles, the idea of the $1.6 billion from I think it was last week that, you know, the Dems shot down, and now what we've got is the president through Sarah Sanders suggesting that there is money from other departments that can be transferred so that he can build the wall, specifically from Homeland Security and I believe the Pentagon. Is that viable?
Well, I think that if you talk to people, that have studied this for a long time, and as you point out, Judge, this is a problem that has been kicked down the road since 1986. The lawmakers in Washington refused to fix the problem that they promised to fix back then. But funding the wall has never been the real big problem here. And the real problem is the will to actually do the hard work of putting up a wall and taking those votes. The only thing we have found out in the last 2 weeks is that Democrats that are coming into control the House and the Senate in Congress have vowed to shut the government down instead of doing something about fixing the border. And whether you call it a wall or a fence or what, the President Trump's wonderful description of it through those tweets you just read, whatever you call it, it is a barrier that prevents people from illegally crossing into the United States. And Democrats have made it very clear that they are on the side of opposing that. And President Trump and Republicans have made it very clear they're on the side of supporting that. And even Democrats who supported, say, the 1996 or the 2006 Fence Act, which did basically the same thing, which was to build a barrier to keep people from sneaking into the country illegally, even a lot of those Democrats have now been pulled by the left wing of their party over into this no borders, anti-ICE, sanctuary city crowd that opposes doing anything about the border.
And you know, Doug, the idea of a wall, a secure fence from 2006, you had Schumer, Pelosi, Obama, they were all, singing the cheers of it. The American people are not stupid. Right. They are in favor of a border. Right. They understand we need to be a sovereign nation. Right. In essence, what they're saying is we're going to obstruct, we're proud to obstruct, and they're almost going against the American people as well.
There's one other component of this you haven't mentioned, judges. We have 11 million people who are here illegally. We need a pathway to citizenship and a wall. We need border security. We need a compromise. And that's what politics is about when you have divided government, which we will have in a couple of weeks.
And that's what the president did when he offered DACA to 1.8 million DACA kids, which is double what
keep negotiating. negotiating,
Obama
Mr.
did.
President.
And yeah,
Keep
but you know
negotiating.
what? Well, he was negotiating in good faith, and they didn't buy it. But anyway, gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Coming
Yeah,
up, Trace
you.
Gallagher has the latest on the former Green Beret who is being charged with murder for killing a suspected terrorist. Then I get reaction from General Tony Tata and Colonel David Hunt, who will tell you exactly why you should be outraged. Don't go away. Tonight, the president is considering reviewing the case of Major Goldstein, a Green Beret who has been charged with the murder of a Taliban bomb maker. Trace Gallagher joins us now from the West Coast newsroom with the latest. Trace?
Good evening, Judge. National security experts say as commander-in-chief, President Trump is well within his rights to review any current or past military case, but they believe when the president publicly said he would review the murder charge against former Special Forces Major Matt Goldstein, he might appear to be pressuring lower-level commanders, though the president's intent remains very unclear. Goldstein admitted during a job interview with the CIA that in 2010 he killed a suspected Afghan bomb maker. The Army launched an investigation, stripped Goldstein of his Special Forces patch and Silver Star, but did not charge him. Then after Goldstein again admitted to killing the insurgent on Fox News, the Army reopened the case and filed charges. Here's former Congressman and retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. Watch.
What I find just absolutely disingenuous and disconcerting is that he has already gone through one investigation, and there was nothing that found it to take this toward a court-martial hearing.
Goldstein's parents say they welcome the president's review of the case, but his wife thinks it is unnecessary. Listen to her.
For them to charge him with premeditated murder is almost laughable, and it would be laughable if it wasn't so serious and disgusting.
The military version of a grand jury will now decide if there is enough evidence to prosecute Goldstein. Judge.
Trace, thanks so much. President Trump has spoken out about Major Goldstein, with some saying the president may be improperly influencing the case due to his role as commander-in-chief. General Tony Tata has a new op-ed out on FoxNews.com addressing the question. He writes, quote, Trump is perfectly within his authority to review the case of Green Beret charged with murder. Joining me now with reaction, author of Dark Winter, General Tony Tata, and Fox News contributor, Colonel David Hunt. All right, Colonel Hunt, I'm going to go to you first. This guy is a decorated war hero. He is someone who is a combat veteran. He's got Distinguished Service Cross. He's got the Silver Star, all kinds of medals of honor, or medals, I should say. And he ends up killing the enemy under circumstances that apparently his superiors don't like. Can you tell us what happened?
Sure. And Merry Christmas, by the way. Matt Goldstein was then a captain in 2010 in the largest battle in the history of the Afghan war, the Battle of Majah. There was two Marines killed by a Taliban bomb maker that the CIA identified. Captain Goldstein's Special Forces team found this guy, captured him, and because there was not a detention center or an intel center nearby, turned him over to the Afghans. The Afghanis, surprise, released this terrorist. Captain Goldstein's team found him again and killed him. They killed him in combat in a massive war. They did the exact right thing. The problem is that some in the Army think, no, he should have been turned back again. Here's the problem. If the guys get turned back and he kills somebody else, now they'd be charging Goldstein with dereliction of duty. They stripped Goldstein a year later from his Distinguished Service Cross, his Silver Star, and his Special Forces qualifications. Unheard of. And now they're trying to go after him for murder. Okay. I think the President of the United States had great instincts in texting this because it rekindled interest in this great injustice.
Okay, General Tata, I read your op-ed piece. What Colonel Hunt said is very interesting. Had this guy that they ended up killing in 2010 killed someone else, then Goldstein would have been charged with dereliction of duty. Why do you think the Afghans, after they captured this guy who was making bombs that killed 2 Marines, why would they cut him loose? I mean, what are the rules over there?
Well, the rules, Judge, are that the intelligence community is supposed to have field detention sites, particularly when you have, as Colonel Hunt said, a major battle like Marja happening. It was the largest battle that we had in Afghanistan. And you're going to have detainees, and proper planning at the time would have allowed for a field detention center where intelligence community, military intelligence community folks would have processed detainees that are a threat to U.S. or coalition forces or have intelligence value. And clearly this individual had both. Goldstein should have never seen this guy again. He should have been taken off the battlefield and processed up through. If you remember, this is when McChrystal had already put in a request to President Obama for a surge of troops back in September, 6 months before, and Obama took a year to get McChrystal the troops. And so this was a major failure of the intelligence community, and Major Goldstein should not even have ever seen that individual again.
Was Goldstein right? I'm going to ask you both one question. Was Goldstein right in killing him, General?
Yeah, given the circumstances, yes, he was correct.
Colonel, was he correct in killing him?
Absolutely, I'd have done it and do it again. Absolutely, he was right.
Okay. Is it the rules of engagement that's... I'm not even going to ask that question. Why is this taking so long? It's 2018. Hunt.
Yeah, the problem is that the Special Operations Community, the Department of the Army, Department of Defense, have twice investigated this guy and found nothing there. And it's because of a lot of general officers' reputations and the argument about ROE. This should never have happened. It's a massive injustice, and it needs to be corrected, and it can be corrected in a matter of hours, easily.
Okay, so General Tata, and I assume you agree with Colonel Hunt, well, who's dragging this guy down?
Well, what I see is that, President Obama weaponized all the agencies, and this happened back in 2016 when he went on Fox News, which, Obama wasn't a fan of Fox News, so I don't think it's a coincidence. And now what we have is a weaponized agency that is going after this individual, which is why I'm very happy that President Trump tweeted out that he was going to review this case, because what he's doing, he's shining a spotlight, Judge,
on it. Okay, so let's talk about that review. There's talk, Colonel Hunt, that this review is something that is improper, the president exerting unlawful command influence. Is that hogwash, or is that accurate?
No, everyone considers that in the chain of command, but this is the President of the United States who sees an injustice, and his instincts are right about this. And that's the reason we're talking about it. It's not because it was the wrong thing to do to a great guy. It's also, it just smells bad. And it's easily corrected. And there's about 4 or 5 things that have to happen to make this, to correct this insidious thing that's done to a very great guy.
Okay, and General Tata, isn't there a difference between exerting influence by interfering or being seen as interfering when you're interfering for the benefit of the individual as opposed to the detriment? My understanding from guys for the Uniform Military Justice Code is that, since the president would be the prosecutor, I mean, who's going to object? Who's going to raise the complaint?
Right. Trust me, the Department of Defense is going to have enough prosecutors with their fangs in Goldstein. So the president has come out and in a very neutral tweet that says, I'm going to review the case. And as is his right and as is his duty to do so. And so by doing that, as I mentioned, he's really just saying, well, I'm going to shine a spotlight on this and everything better be on the up and up. Yep. And he left himself enough room that if something untoward did happen, then, he can review it and say, well, something untoward did happen and we need to go in that direction.
All
so
right, Colonel
I don't
Hunt,
think that's the case.
Colonel Hunt, final word on this thing. You seem you are the recipient of many medals, including Distinguished Service Cross as well. And I know you don't like to talk about this, but you found that they're taking his medals to be one of the most outrageous things about this case. Now, here's the guy who's been charging him with premeditated murder. You were so offended by that. Tell us why.
The 30 years of service, 18 years of Fox, I've never heard of it. Now, what you do after you've done the action to get you the medal has nothing to do with the day you got the medal. It's just not done. It shows that the United States Army was really going after this guy to take his DSC Silver Star and a Special Operations badge away. Is after they said no, it was after they had 2 boards that they found nothing wrong. It's terrible, and it's just never done. And it's such an insult to the service and to this great guy and to the medals themselves. It was really overstepping themselves, and it shows how badly they've been treating Matt.
All right. Well, General Tater, Colonel Hunt, thanks so much for your insight. We're going to stay on top of this one. This case fascinates me. Anyway, up next, Democrats are just weeks away from officially retaking the House, and they're already scheming to impeach the president. Coming up, we'll lay out how one House committee is plotting investigation after investigation. Hannity continues after the break. Now with the Democrats taking control of the House next month, they're gearing up for investigation after investigation, unleashing new probes on everything from border apprehensions to travel expenses, email use, and of course, more phony Russia collusion. The only question is, how far will they go? Joining us now for reaction, Fox News contributors both, Rachel Campos-Duffy and Jessica Tarloff. All right, good evening. Let's talk about how far will they go, Jessica?
As far as they need to go. Everyone is scaling off of any talk of impeachment, but this is their constitutional right and what the obligation to be conducting oversight, as Elijah Cummings has said. And it's certainly a long time coming here. Elections have consequences, and the American public elected Democrats to be a check on this administration. The Republicans have had control of this for 6 years. We've seen investigation after investigation focused on Hillary Clinton a lot of the time, email investigations, IRS, that they're going after Tea Party groups when in fact they were also going after progressive groups. Benghazi, which Kevin McCarthy admitted was actually a political stunt to hurt her poll numbers.
Well, in the end, though, I mean, and Rachel Campos-Duffy, you're going to have to agree with this. In the end, it is, as Jessica says, it is the consequence, the positive consequence of winning.
Well, first of all, one of the first things they're going to do is shut down investigations into the DOJ and the FBI and the corruption that happened there. So there goes the idea that they're after, the truth and finding out what's really happening. They're not. This is an agenda about destroying Trump and slowing down and slowing down the president's agenda, which they know has been very successful in reducing poverty, reducing dependency, growing the economy. They have to stop that before 2020. And that's what these people will do. These are not your JFK Democrats. These are radicals. They have gavels in their hands now at very powerful committees. And this is what they're going to do. And I'm going to tell you what, Judge, they want to do this. They have a constitutional right to do this, but they will pay the price in 2020 because this is not what the American people want. The American people want deals. And what they're seeing, even today, you had earlier on your show, this discussion about the border. They have no desire to compromise or find a middle ground. They threw the DACA kids under the bus because they didn't want to give the president the money that they wanted. They threw the people they claim to care about under the bus.
Jessica,
so
but
I don't think it's going to work.
What Rachel is saying is accurate in the sense that whatever House, whatever party it has oversight in the House, the truth is that this has very little to do with the legislative agenda. It has very little to do with laws that are being passed on behalf of the American people. I really think that oversight and reform, because there rarely is a prosecution after oversight and reform, is more about just getting out the message and, the ability to frame the public perception on an issue.
I certainly think that's an important function of it. But when you look at the list, and I believe Axios published 85 potential things they could be looking into, these are things that the American public are focused on right now, especially concerning what's going on with the Mueller probe, the SDNY filings, which is found out. Don't God me, Rachel, and I got something to say.
Rachel, hang on. Go ahead.
We just heard today that the Trump Foundation was really nothing more than a slush fund, and not the Clinton Foundation, the Trump Foundation. Trump University had a $25 million fraud investigation into it. We know that the president is profiting off of his office, the family. You have the whole Saudi royal contingent that's staying at the Trump hotel.
The Saudi money that Hillary took to her foundation and never reported it? Now, Rachel, I'm going to let you get in. Now, Rachel, go ahead.
I just want to say, I just want to say you are living, Jessica, in a New York City, D.C. Beltway bubble, because outside in real America, where I live here in Wisconsin, nobody talks about Russia. Nobody does. They all just want to live their lives, have enough money for their families, take care of their businesses,
so why did they elect
have a
Democrats,
job. That's
Rachel?
what they care about, and
Outside
that's
of my
what
bubble,
these investigations are about.
Why did they elect Democrats? We may have 41 seats in the House, 7 gubernatorial seats, hundreds of legislative seats. They want Republicans to be
stop
in
the gridlock, and
no,
because
they don't want you guys anymore.
They didn't vote for the Democrats for more investigating this administration to death. What they wanted was compromise. They want government to work. It's that simple. The American people aren't as sinister as the people in Washington, D.C., and a lot of us pundits think they are.
Jessica, you do have to agree that there wasn't anything that President Trump suggested that the Democrats didn't resist or obstruct or not be a part of. ISIS, from what I'm hearing from the president now, he's looking to work with the Democrats.
He has no choice now.
No, he does have a choice. I'll tell you why he has a choice. Because the House does nothing. Everything depends on the Senate.
Right.
All right. There's no legislative agenda that they can pass.
Chuck Schumer sat down there and offered him $1.6 billion for his border wall, which I think he should take. Now he's up there tweeting about it. It's going to be slats, and I don't need a full wall.
All right.
Democrats will work with him on an agenda that benefits the American people, but that means getting rid of this tax plan that didn't benefit the average.
Right.
We have to go.
We do have to go. Thank you. All right. Coming up next, you won't want to miss our video of the day. One young boy got a very special Christmas present. That's next. Terry Dad, home for the holidays. It's tonight's video of the day. Watch.
You better open it.
Open it. Open it, monkey. I see the box already.
What do you think it is? What's in there?
Nine. Whoa! What is it?
What is it?
What is it? Oh my God!
We want to take a moment to say thank you to all the members of our military who won't be able to celebrate Christmas with their families. We appreciate you all and your service. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have left this evening, but before we go, Christmas is 1 week away. And if you're looking for the perfect gift, you could always pick up a copy of my book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals.